Hey y'all. So it's been a while since I've done one of these. I'm really excited to get back into these replay analyses. Yeah, it's just been a busy few months, so I haven't got around to doing one. But we're back into it. We're testing for PT season. So let's get right into it. This is Iyslander versus Katsu. And Katsu right now is actually in a very strong spot, I would say. Especially since Iyslander lost hypothermia. It was one of the tools that made this matchup kind of unwinnable for Katsu. But now that it's gone, it can actually be quite tricky. Katsu is a deck that has tons of blues, tons of block threes, and tons of breakpoints, all of which, Iyslander hates. So let's see how this goes. Our opponent won the die roll and chose to go second, which I think is a correct decision. I think especially now that Icelanders are more about just tempo, like, with our big attacks, just going second is where you want to be. And you just hope the Iyslander doesn't get to resolve Insidious Chill. Especially with the loss of Amulet as well, Iyslander going first now has a lot fewer pieces of board state that she can set up. So, opponent went second there and just blocked us out. We managed to get a life from the Fighting Spirit and just hold on to the Wounded Bull. And we get to Arsenal Blizzard. Oh, and then we draw into 2 Channel Lake Frigids, which is definitely not what we want. When we have a Blizzard and Arsenal already, we really just want our disruption to be spaced out. Because if we can keep our opponent down to just trading 2-card hands for 2-card hands, then we're in a really good spot. We will win that because our stuff is just more efficient than theirs. But if they ever get to go wide, that's when we'll start to lose. And so we really want our Blizzards and CLFs to be spaced out over the course of the game to be able to make that happen. But instead, we drew like too many of them at once, which is a little unfortunate. But we'll see. We obviously block out the Be Like Water because that's something that they can use to go become really wide. So we block that, and then they just come in E-Strike for 7, so that's really good for us. Of course, this means we didn't get an opportunity to Blizzard them anyway. So I'm just going to be getting rid of both my CLFs here, which does not feel good at all. But unfortunately, that's just the way the hands lined up. We could have forced a Blizzard onto the Be Like Water, but they still had cards in hand. It was, they probably could have just paid for it and just moved on with their lives. So I'd rather save the Blizzard for a time where it's going to be more impactful. So it looks like our opponent didn't have one of their starter pieces, so we're in this trading 2-card hands for 2-card hands for a little bit, which really favors us. As you can see, we could block out the E-Strike completely, but they leak damage on a Wounded Bull, and they're likely going to leak damage on a Fighting Spirit here as well. So far we've been winning these turn cycles. And we've still got this Blizzard in our arsenal just for insurance. If, at some point they choose to just tank a damage, and we can blow them out with a Blizzard. So, speaking of blowing them out with a Blizzard, they're starting with a Surging Strike here, leaving 1 card in hand. So I really want to bait my opponent into discarding the card in their hand for the Katsu trigger. And then in the resolution step, I Blizzard the Surging Strike. So that's what I'm going for here. So I choose not to block this. However, that was a bit of a mistake. I should have blocked a little. All I need is this hit to go through for the Katsu to trigger to bait what I want to bait. Because as long as they discard, I'll be able to do the Blizzard, blow them out. But if I manage to do that, I'm left with 4 cards I can't actually completely use. So I did need to block this a little, actually. I should have put my E-Strike in front of this and just let 1 through. Yeah, so I don't sync this because I want them to use the Katsu trigger so that I can Blizzard. And yeah, but instead they just had the natural whelming, which honestly isn't that unlikely right now in Katsu. They run so many whelmings and so many descendants that it's like them just getting the natural combo lines is becoming a lot more frequent. It's actually very, very scary. So here I realized, I had to block with my E-Strike on that Surging Strike, because this is not a spot I want to be in. So I just put my Fighting Spirit in front of this to gain the life, get some value of it as a blocking card. But I definitely lost value on this turn cycle by not blocking with the E-Strike earlier. Oh, well, that mistake has been made, and we'll just move on, pretend that didn't happen, and yeah, we just E-Strike for 7, and we're still just holding on to this Blizzard. Okay, opponent starts with Surging Strike again, and this is the exact same position as previously, so again, I'm just going to make the same play, and hope that this time they do discard the Katsu and let me blow them, and then that lets me blow them out with the Blizzard. So, although this time, if they don't discard to Katsu, I would just Blizzard this anyway in the resolution step, so that the same thing that happened previously wouldn't happen. Also, that lets me Arsenal this Channel Lake Frigid, which is our final Channel Lake Frigid. This is the third one we've seen, so, I really want to make use of this. This time, our opponent does discard to Katsu, so that is quite a big blowout, that we just get to Blizzard a Surging Strike in the resolution step. Remember, you can wait for them to resolve the Katsu trigger, and you're still in the resolution step, and then you can go ahead and Blizzard the Surging Strike. And if you want more information about the resolution step, you can go ahead and check out my other video on the resolution step. Okay, so our opponent went ahead and banished Descendant Gustwave. And then we just go ahead and Blizzard the Surging Strike and just end their turn right here. So we basically got them to discard the energy potion just for nothing. At least like for our Blizzard, which is really good for us. And then this leaves us open to just Scar into Insidious Chill on our turn. And normally trying to resolve Insidious Chill in an aggro matchup can be very, very scary. But because I have this Channel Lake Frigid as insurance in my arsenal, I feel very confident doing this. Because the tempo I lose by setting up Insidious Shield can be offset by the tempo I gain by playing the Channel Lake Frigid on my opponent's turn. Great, so our opponent just takes a Scar. They're probably expecting a Wounded Bull or something, some big attack. So they can just wait to see like what I'm actually going to do before they commit to giving me cards. So we do this and then we draw up and we actually only have one Ice card. So that's one we need to keep for our turn if you want to keep the Channel Lake Frigid around. So it's a bit of an unfortunate hand. I was really hoping to play the CLF and Waning Moon here off of Tunic. But instead, I'm going to need to just play the CLF off the yellow Ice Vein, like pitching the yellow Ice Vein. And then on my turn, it would probably be Scar for a Scar into Coronet Peak with the Ice card, so that I can keep the CLF around. So not the best draw here on the turn that we want to resolve CLF, and we also kind of have to resolve the CLF because our opponent has 4 cards, and so if we don't tax them, we could just take way too much damage this turn. So we have to do that, so we lose a bit of like Waning Moon value here and Tunic value because it's just been the Tunic Resource has just been sitting there for quite a while. Opponent just does a Razor Reflex just to push a bunch of damage while we aren't blocking, which we can't block because we want to. If to keep the CLF around, we need to keep an Ice card, so I actually couldn't block there. So our turn's still alright. Scarfire Scar into Coronet Peak is fine, and arseling a red Ice Vein going into a CLF turn, which already has 1 flow counter, is actually really, really good, because then that really increases the chance that we can keep the CLF around for a second turn. Because as long as I draw 2 Ice cards, I can Ice Vein, fuse it, and pitch to Waning Moon, and then I get to keep CLF around in a way that doesn't force me into an inefficient play. So perfect, yeah, we draw into Ice cards now, so I know I can keep CLF around for an extra turn, and I can go ahead and block this. So all in all, we were about 4 to 5 life behind when we resolved Insidious Chill, and now we are about like 10 life behind, so you could say the Insidious Chill cost us like 5 life, which honestly is really good. Like being able to like only pay like 5 life for Insidious Chill is really good. It definitely makes up for it in the long run. As long as you can resolve all 3 triggers of it, and since we got it pretty early on in the game, we can be confident that we'll be able to resolve all its charges. Right. Also on the 100 wins, I blocked on my blue Ice Vein because our opponent is representing AB3. So blue Ice Vein, really, really low priority. If they had even just AB2, that card is a lot stronger, but against AB3 and against Katsu, which has so many blues, there really is no point trying to keep the blue Ice Vein. So here the play is pretty straightforward. We just red Ice Vein, and we'll Moon as well, pitching the Frosting and Arsenal Cold Snap to try and leak some damage on our opponent's turn. That's something you really want to do. Every time you Ice Vein your opponent with a chill behind it, you want to make sure you're arsenaling your most aggressive card. I guess in this case, the most aggressive card would be Frosting, but Frosting's really bad, so Arsenal Cold Snap to really try and get some damage against on your opponent. A lot of times, you might Arsenal your red or something. Like, say you have a red Woundable or something, you Arsenal that, but your opponent... your opponent's stripped of cards from their hand, but you can't damage them, so... on their turn, if you just have a red in Arsenal, so... you want to make sure not to make that mistake. Alright, so opponent fortunately drew quite a few blues. They drew 2 blues and a red so far we can see. So they blocked a bunch of our damage. We actually didn't end up leaking too much. And that's the strength of your opponent, like bringing AB3. Like when you resolve your CLF and you're doing big ice veins against them, they can just sort of stop playing the game for a while and just block you out. And that's kind of annoying for us to deal with. So in their turn, yeah, we do the cold snap play, but they actually had a third blue, so they drew 3 blues that turn, so we like barely leaked any damage, which is really, really unfortunate. Comes back to us. Now we have the option to Scar for a Scar into Aether Hail, like blue Aether Hail, and so, you know, we represent 4 physical and 4 arcane. I decide that because my opponent isn't low enough for me to really prioritize damage, I still want to be disrupting them. So I start with a Winter's Bite, which means my opponent sees I'm playing Winter's Bite and I have 3 cards remaining. So they're fully expecting like a Wounded Bull or Fighting Spirit. So I'm tempting them into pitching a red for this Winter's Bite, and then I'll follow up with a Scar for a Scar and for Coronet Peak, which then the Coronet Peak will take a full extra card from them because I'm baiting them into pitching the red to this Winter's Bite right now. Whereas if you only had 2 cards remaining after a Winter's Bite, your opponent just pitches a yellow or a blue because it's pretty telegraphed that you're going to Coronet Peak. So yeah. So in this case, yep, as we expect, our opponent pitched a red. So now I know this Coronet Peak is going to get a full extra card from them, and that actually means I don't need to Arsenal this Blizzard. So over here I have the choice of pitching Aether Hail or Blizzard for the Coronet Peak, and I actually decided to pitch a Blizzard because I've disrupted my opponent enough at this point. They're going to give me a full extra card for this Coronet Peak. They're going to be left with 1 card in hand, 1 card in Arsenal. So I really want to take this opportunity to leak some damage in with the Aether Hail rather than Arsenal Blizzard, which I likely won't even be able to use in their turn. And yeah. Okay, and then we draw into a bit of a... like one of the classic Iyslander hands, like, when you have the tempo, you draw into 4 blues. It happens a lot to Iyslander and Guardians. So it's a little unfortunate. There is an argument to resolving the Frost Hex, but I have a feeling, like, it's very unlikely the Frost Hex deals any damage over the course of this game, especially since my opponent has Kodachis, which is a very easy source for them to get rid of Frostbites. So this is a little unfortunate, so we're definitely going to Aether Hail here on our opponent's turn to leak some damage in, also get a Heart of Final value. But our turn's looking to just be blue frosting into Waning Moon, which is very, very, very bad. Especially since what we're arseling is a cold snap rather than anything like really disruptive, like a Blizzard or a CLF. So this part doesn't feel great. At the same time, we have sort of equalized the life total, so that part feels good. And we still have 2 chill triggers. So, a bit of a dud turn for us here, but we might be able to make it up with the chill triggers. If my opponent didn't have Tuning Cup, there was an argument to Coronet Peak instead of Frosting. And the reason for that would be, with Coronet Peak, you sort of force a card from an opponent, whereas if you do Frosting Moon, you give them the option to just take 3 damage, to use their life as a resource to be more aggressive. So, if they didn't have Tuning Up, that was an argument to do that, but since they have Tuning Up, we just do Frosting Moon. Opponent pitches a full blue. Obviously, the moon is telegraphed, so they're gonna block everything. We still pitch a Frost Hex because we just don't want that in our hand, and we're just looking to draw some red. Okay, they start with a Surging Strike from Arsenal. I make a bit of a mistake here. I didn't need to play the Cold Snap right now. I could have waited. What I wanted was more information on what I'm going to draw to try and plan my turn so I can plan my blocks. But it probably would have been better for me to just let my opponent live in fear of potentially another Blizzard or something. So that they don't get to, they need to agonize a little more over their Katsu trigger decision. So I didn't need to Cold Snap there. And then we just let the Surging Strike hit, because, like I said, their Katsu is really, really consistent now. With, a lot of them are running 6 Descendant Gust Waves, like 3 red, 3 yellows, and the 3 red Whelmings. So I've come to realize that I don't mind just letting a Surging hit, because even if I block it, it's sometimes very likely that they just have the other combo piece in their hand. And then I'm going to need to try and block that, and then stuff becomes really, really awkward. So we just let them have it, and we'll block the Whelming afterwards. Since we have Tuning Up and our Ironhide still here, we are kind of okay blocking this breakpoint, like a Whelming or a Descendant that they send at us. Cool, so opponent resolves the Katsu trigger, and I go ahead and Waning Moon here before, they get a chance to, like, draw any more cards. Say with a Whelming or an Ancestral or something like that. And since I know I'm going to be using Ironhide off of Tunic, like, I know I'm going to be using Waning Moon this turn anyway. Also, this way, staying the resolution step, my opponent still needs to be scared of a Blizzard, so they may not be comfortable blocking the entire Waning Moon. So that's the other mind game you can play with the opponent. Yep, so we just go ahead and block 5 in the Whelming. This lets us play around Ancestral as well, or potentially another Concealed Blade. And our opponent ends with an E-Pot, which is actually, it's actually really, really scary. E-Pot means that they might be able to, like, move past our Blizzard or CLF disruption. Now, of course, both CLFs are at the bottom of the deck. Oh wait, no, we have just one remaining CLF. It's like near the bottom. But Blizzard, E-Pod is very good Blizzard insurance, so I hate to see that. On our turn, we get to Arsenal's Brain Freeze, which honestly is quite good insurance as well. It may not be quite the same level as like a Blizzard or CLF, but with Insidious Chill, Blizzard Brain Freeze can be very, very disruptive. However, nowadays, Katsus, again, they actually don't have that many 0 costs anymore. All the Descendant Gust Waves cost 1. At least the printed cost is 1. Bonds of Ancestry printed cost is 2. So I found a lot of times my Brain Freeze doesn't hit, especially when I've coupled it with an Insidious Chill, because they can just pitch the 0 cost, and then they leave the non-0 cost in the hand, which my Brain Freeze doesn't hit. So Brain Freeze is kind of the best insurance I can get right now with all my CLFs gone, and I think just one Blizzard left in the deck. Okay, opponent goes in and gives us Mask at this point, recognizing that their life is getting real low, and they're unlikely to be able to threaten Mask anyway. So they're just capturing their 2 life there, and also that's a very heads-up play by them, because you don't know when the Iyslander is going to stop sending physical damage at you and start sending just a bunch of Tall Arcane. We actually haven't sent that many red Ice Veins at our opponent this game, so it's very wise of them to like to just block the to use the Mask there. And we've drawn into a red Ice Vein, which is really what I was hoping for, but there's no Ice card here, so that's really, really unfortunate. No Ice card means we also don't get to Brain Freeze. Well, we don't get to fuse the Brain Freeze. So honestly, quite lucky for us that our opponent didn't draw a starter here. Like a threatening starter like Surging Strike or Be Like Water, because it looks like the combat chain this turn isn't going to be that bad, which is really good for us because we actually don't have any disruption. So we go ahead and block 3 here. Honestly, I just don't want to let my opponent get a Katsu trigger to get, like, say, honestly anything, even like Winds of Eternity, which would be a 0 for 4. And if they actually send something threatening after this, I can still use my Coronet Peak to block. At this point, Coronet Peak is not going to be super critical. Honestly, Coronet Peak's best... Like, the main reason of Coronet Peak is that it's a very easy way to keep a Channel League Frigid around, but we know that all our CLFs are basically gone at this point. So, and with the life totals this low, I'm okay using Coronet Peak to block at some point. So that was my decision. That was my decision behind blocking that 100 wins. Our opponent just follows up with Kadachi. We obviously don't block this, and then they just pass. Which leaves us with not the most efficient line. Yeah, so we're just priced into doing Wounded Bull, pitching the red Ice Vein along with it. There's an argument to keeping that red Ice Vein, but I believe I have 1 more left in the deck as well as a yellow Ice Vein left in the deck. So I don't want to draw a hand of, too many Ice Veins. That feels really, really bad. So I decided to get rid of it and just send his Wounded Bull for 8. Okay, so opponent drew a lot of blues. And they just block us out, which is definitely not what we want. We really want to leak damage from the Wounded Bull. Yeah, and then over here they just do a Kadachi, and we think it's unlikely they're going to use the Arsenal card because the previous turn they didn't. They just went ahead and Arsenal that last card, so I'm guessing it's a combo piece. It's like a middle piece instead of a starter. So we actually are kind of trapped into not being able to use a hand very efficiently here. We could just Brain Freeze without fusing it so we can activate Waning Moon. But our opponent has 2 floating, so that would just represent 1 point of damage. So there's really no point doing that. So yeah, it's going to be a little inefficient for a while. But on the bright side, we did draw Ice Vein, so definitely very glad that we pitched our red Ice Vein the previous turn, just knowing what's left in our deck. That we were pretty likely to see some Ice Veins soon. So that's good for us. And then over here on our turn, we get to red Ice Vein and pitch it and also activate Waning Moon. Alright, so opponent goes in and activates the Tunic. And then they pitch a blue to pay for the Insidious Shield. Now there's the Ice Vein on the stack that they're figuring out how to deal with. Yep, so they went ahead and lost 4 life for the Ice Vein and just left 2 floating. So I decided not to moon. I decided just hold on to my ice card because, you know, we've had the couple of turns in this, a couple of turns in this game where we didn't draw an ice card. So I was like, let me just hold on to this. They have the 2 floating for the moon anyway, so there's no point pitching the moon. In any case, I can just guarantee that I'm going to have the ice card to fuse the yellow Ice Vein on my turn or fuse the Brain Freeze on my opponent's turn. So when it starts to be like water, which is actually kind of scary because of the E-Pot. If I let this hit, they could use the E-Pot to pay for the Be Like Water and then discard their last card to Katsu and actually get, say, a Descendant or a Whelming, which could make things a little awkward for us. So I decided to just go ahead and Brain Freeze here. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure about this. I basically what I was looking for at this point is to put my opponent in that sort of checkmate position, where if I Brain Freeze and Waning Moon right now, and I send a Wounded Bull on my turn, then they're kind of stuck in a position where they can't block too much because then they're open to Arcane on their own turn. But if they don't block too much, they will just die eventually to Arcane. So that's a play I chose to go for here. I was just playing the Brain Freeze and just ripping the last card of the hand. So the Brain Freeze effect not useful, is just the Insidious Shield trigger actually that's going to be ripping the card. There was an argument that I can just let them do their little combo with the Be Like Water because I have enough life to survive through it. And maybe I block with like the yellow Ice Vein or something and just send Wounded Bull. But another thing I'm concerned about at this point is the threat density left in my deck. This is the last big attack I have, and I have one more red Ice Vein that's somewhere at the bottom. We just pitched it. And so once my opponent's this low, I just want to make sure that I can send threat after threat at them. So yeah, so we go ahead and do that. We actually managed to leak a full 3 from the Waning Moon because the last card was a red. So that's good. And then now, yeah, this Wounded Bull puts them in that position which I was talking about earlier. If they block too much here, they can die to Arcane on their own turn. And if they don't block too much, well, honestly, same thing. The other thing about keeping this yellow Ice Vein, like doing the Brain Freeze play, is that it means that even if my opponent blocks out the Wounded Bull, I know that I have this yellow Ice Vein to continue sending threats at them and continue presenting a bunch of damage, eventually just whittling them down. If my opponent tries to pivot into being very defensive, which is something you have to be concerned about when your opponent has presented AB3, is that you have to be cognizant of the fact that at some point, especially with the number of blues that they have, they might end up just saying, okay, I'm gonna make you work for it and basically make like fatigue you. Because, you know, they're looking through a graveyard as well, tracking your threats. So that's another reason why I wanted to do a Brain Freeze play, so I can also guarantee that I get to keep both the Wounded Bull and the yellow Ice Vein. So we finally go ahead and cash in our Coronet Peak on that, on the Surging Strike. Just, there's no point letting our opponent even trying to get any sort of combo off, but they had a natural Descendant in their hand. And then they do Bonds of Ancestry from the Arsenal. So we were right that the Arsenal was just some random combo piece. But since they showed us that last card, I know I don't need to be worried about any sort of Oasis Respite or anything. I can just send this yellow Ice Vein. And with the Waning Moon, that's a total of 7 damage. Even with our opponent's E-Pot, they do die. So there we have it. We managed to get there against a Katsu. I think the Blizzard all that time ago, which blew them out when they discarded Katsu, was a big reason why the game went the way it did. I think if instead they just went ahead and like resolved that E-Pot. No, we would have Blizzard them anyway. They like Arsenal that E-Pot and managed to resolve it later on. Things have been a lot more difficult for us. But a very important thing to realize against Katsu is what you Arsenal. A lot of times, the cards you want to arsenal against, typical aggro decks, their Cold Snaps and Polar Blast, have felt a lot weaker because of the number of blues Katsu has. A lot of times they just have like 1 or 2 floating at the end of the turn. They start with a Surging Strike and they just don't use their 1 floating. Or if they start with a Descendant, then they just have 2 floating, which they can use to AB you. So a lot of times those Cold Snaps don't feel like they're getting you 4 points of value because they're just letting your opponent use their floating resources. So I found those cards to be pretty underwhelming in this matchup. Definitely favoring, just keeping the Blizzard or the Brain Freeze or CLF in your arsenal, just keeping it there until you can actually blow them out with them. And until then, you just trade 2-card hand for 2-card hand. So that's at least so far what I've discovered of this matchup. And yeah, we'll see how further testing goes. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed it.